Hidden within the shadow of the world's highest peak lies a secret woven from lifelong obsession and endless solitude. George Mallory, a name wandering gracefully between recorded history and timeless myth, lived and breathed the age-old haunting phrase simply because it is there, etching its meaning deep into the very core of his being. With his own life tonight, follow his quiet footsteps amid silent swirling snow and wind and journey inward to find the final eternal resting place of your own soul. Some souls depart this mortal world only to gain everlasting life upon higher untouched heights. George Mallory left behind an unsolved mystery in the thin freezing air of the high mountains. His story carries no loud noise, no worldly turmoil, only heavy labored breath sinking into snow and the quiet watchful gaze of the endless starry sky. Tonight settle into calm alongside this gentle unrushed tale and drift peacefully into deep rest. If a towering mountain can stand as a living faith, then George Mallory remains its most devout and loyal believer. He vanished into the misty clouds of Mount Everest in 1924, his fate unknown until his frozen form was rediscovered 75 years later. Even locked in ice for decades, his body still held the steady upward posture of one forever climbing toward the summit. Tonight sit close beside the soft glow of the hearth and listen to this quiet farewell woven from high mountains' poetic spirit and eternal transcendence. When a man lies alone frozen in the icy wilderness at an altitude of 8,000 meters for 75 long years, yet still holds his body tilted upward in quiet resolve, you feel the quiet grandeur of human perseverance. His skin faded to a pale marble hue, carved slowly by the passage of time, his hands clamped firmly into the frozen earth as if locked in an endless silent contest against the bitter cold and relentless wind. This solitary soul, guarded by mountain ice for nearly a century, is none other than George Mallory, the most mysterious legendary climber in the entire history of Mount Everest. Tonight let the soft warm glow of flickering firelight stay with us as we wander fully into the untold story of his life. Even to this day people still debate whether he already stood upon the highest point on earth before his fateful disappearance, yet his greatest legacy lies not in a symbolic victory or a worldly trophy but in his soul-stirring reply to endless questioning. Simply because the mountain is there, this is far more than a bold declaration from a fearless explorer. It is the humblest yet most magnificent resonance between a single human spirit and the boundless vast universe. Relax your shoulders fully now, breathe into the rare pure stillness unique to these lofty heights, a silence that filters away all trivial noise and earthly distraction. Let your mind drift back to the crisp frozen morning of 1920, for a moment belonging only to howling wind, falling snow, and unyielding human courage. In 1924 Mount Everest still stood untouched as a sacred virgin peak in the eyes of the world, wrapped in deep reverence for divine spirits and the primal fear of the unknown. George Mallory stood quietly before the base camp, gazing upward at the towering massif known to local Tibetans as the Mother of the Earth. Carrying no arrogant desire for conquest within his heart, he had already faced bitter defeat on two prior expeditions, the violent icy gales of Everest nearly shattering all his gentle dreams and hopes for life. Still he chose to return, drawn back to the mountains, carrying a soul scarred by the horrors of the First World War, a spirit desperate for healing and renewal through sacred natural wonder. Mountaineering equipment of that era remained extremely crude and rudimentary. Climbers wore thick woolen coats, heavy nailed boots and bulky oxygen tanks that felt like cold iron shackles weighing down every step. Mallory personally disliked these clunky breathing devices. Dismissing them as an unnatural intrusion, he once mockingly called metal snot. To him, true mountain climbing ought to be a pure spiritual and physical baptism, an unmediated honest conversation between human being and towering peak. During those quiet days high on the mountain, he wrote frequent heartfelt letters to his beloved wife Ruth, his words filled not with grand heroic rhetoric but gentle longing for the green meadows of home and sincere reverence for the silent snow-capped giant. Yet every time he lifted his eyes to gaze at the sharp silver triangular peak rising into the sky, a quiet inner longing grew deeper and more unignorable within him. It was the quiet call of fate, a desperate profound yearning that would slowly wither away left unanswered. George Mallory was never a reckless, impulsive adventurer. Instead, he carried the delicate sensitivity, refined intellect and poetic spirit of a true Cambridge scholar. He once rode peacefully along the quiet banks of the River Cam, wandering through classical poetry, searching for deeper meaning and purpose in life, until he discovered mountaineering, an art form that pushed human vitality to its extreme limits. Before setting off for Everest, he could have remained within the shelter of academia, living a respected, comfortable life as a teacher, following a predictable, peaceful path stretching clearly into old age. Yet that quiet ease felt to him like a slow spiritual death. He craved the intense, raw feeling of truly being alive, only found lingering on the fragile, blurred boundary between life and death. His entire life balanced gently between two worlds: the warm, loving embrace of his wife and three cherished children, and the lofty, unreachable summit he had never once set foot upon. In Letters to Ruth he wrote plainly, this feels like walking into a war, yet I have no desire to become a hero, I only long to return home safely. This deep inner conflict filled his journey with a quiet melancholy, unshakable resolve. When the entire climbing team sank into overwhelming exhaustion, despair and bitter cold, only Mallory remained awake deep inside his dark, lonely tent, carefully mending worn leather boots with steady, patient hands. He understood clearly this expedition represented the final mission placed upon him by his nation and his era, the only remaining path to find answers for his own wandering soul. As the world rushed rapidly into the age of mechanical industry and cold rationality, he chose to offer a quiet, primitive tribute to the ancient, untamed myth of nature through the pure power of human flesh and will. June 8, 1924 marked a day forever etched into mountaineering history. The sky shrouded in an ominous pale gray haze heavy with unspoken foreboding. George Mallory and his young climbing partner Andrew Irvine set out from their high assault camp, thousands of meters above sea level, vanishing slowly into thick swirling clouds. From the distant view of watchers they appeared like two small dark ink spots upon a blank sheet of white paper, moving steadily, resolutely upward toward the legendary summit that was the final glimpse anyone ever caught of Mallory through field telescopes captured mid-stride, crossing the dangerous narrow rocky pass known forever as the second step. For decades afterward this fleeting image remained the greatest unsolved mystery in all climbing history. Did he truly reach the top? If he succeeded, he would stand as the very first human to conquer Mount Everest 29 full years before Edmund Hillary. If he fell short, what thoughts lingered in his mind in his final moments? The air grew thin and still at those extreme altitudes. Even the howling wind seemed thickened and muted by lack of oxygen. Mallory's footsteps grew heavier with every slow advance, his heartbeat thundering like a low drum deep within his chest, each ragged breath feeling as though swallowing shards of frozen ice. Still he never turned back. Standing within that pure monochrome world of endless blue sky and endless white snow, he finally broke free from earthly gravity, trivial worldly worries and the heavy labels of ordinary life. He was no longer merely a devoted husband, loving father, respected scholar or thoughtful teacher. He became one with the mountain itself, a living embodiment of the timeless phrase, because it is there. More than half a century slipped silently by, George Mallory's name fading into yellowed, forgotten archives, until a chance discovery in 1999 rewrote his legacy forever. A search team exploring the rocky gravel slopes on Everest's northern face stumbled upon an extraordinarily well-preserved frozen body, the long-lost remains of Mallory, missing for 75 years. What struck all who found him most deeply was his profound calm despite enduring decades of brutal wind, ice and snow. His expression remained restrained, serene and untouched by mortal fear. Researchers examined his few remaining belongings, discovering a stopped pocket watch, faded aged letters, yet one precious item was conspicuously missing. He had promised Ruth that if he ever reached the summit he would tuck her small portrait into the highest point of the mountain and leave it there for all time. Inside his worn leather wallet that cherished photograph of his wife was nowhere to be found. This subtle, quiet detail brought gentle comfort to countless souls lingering in quiet contemplation late into the night, hinting that he may well have fulfilled his promise. In the coldest, most desolate place on earth he completed the warmest, most heartfelt farewell to his beloved, then chose to merge forever with the mountain he had admired, chased and loved his entire life. This profound discovery closed the final circle of meaning within Mallory's life, proving that climbing was never about standing above all humanity in empty glory, but about finding a quiet, sacred corner where the restless soul could finally belong. His 75 years of lonely, frozen vigil high upon the peak earned him the deepest, most reverent tribute to human idealism from generations to come. Now draw your mind back to this quiet night, wrapped safely in warm peace, far removed from bitter cold, exhausting climbs and mortal struggle. George Mallory's story carries no focus on victory, defeat or cold numerical records of height and achievement. It speaks instead to how a single soul can listen closely to the quiet, unwavering inner calling amid the noise, chaos and distraction of the modern world. The timeless phrase, because the mountain is there, holds a deeper hidden truth. It reminds us that our truest, strongest, uncompromising self always stands waiting within us. Tonight you may set aside every heavy climb, every burden, every self-imposed demand and land gently into perfect stillness. Mallory has slumbered peacefully beneath Everest's starry sky for countless years, where the stars hang closer and brighter than on the lowlands and the wind flows pure and untainted. Allow your breathing to drift as naturally as soft mountain mist. No longer chasing, no longer anxious, no longer striving. The greatest summit any of us can ever reach lies not upon distant icy peaks, but in finding inner peace and gentle reconciliation with oneself. Outside your window the stars twinkle soft and bright, just as they did when Mallory gazed upward in quiet wonder. May your night be wrapped in the same profound stillness as the silent snow-capped mountains, calm, untroubled and full of quiet dreams. Good night and sweet dreams.